it's Keely here for Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I woke up this morning and decided it was a good chance to harvest some of my lavender flowers, not realising it was about to start chucking it down. So I've just been out there, I've harvested as much as I possibly can. When I harvest them, I do quite literally just take the flower spike and I cut down in between where the spike comes up, because I can see there's tons of little buds that are ready to come out on the bush as well. Taking these away will make those buds come out bigger and stronger, so we can get a second and third and sometimes a fourth harvest out of these plants. I also leave just enough that the bees can still come and collect the nectar from them as well, just to keep the plant nice, happy and healthy. So it has just started raining. I'm going to take this back into the house, then I'm going to head down to the shop and show you what I do with my lavender. Okay, so we are down the shop. I have got my lavender flowers in my basket. It is time to start processing so I can start using them. And the main product that I make with my lavenders is my outdoor body spray. I make what is called a Hydrosol, and that becomes the base ingredient of this spray, and bugs absolutely hate lavender. So that's what we're going to do today, and that is what this little pot is for. So this is what we're going to use to make our Hydrosol. This is my 5-litre Copper Alembic column still, and I got this from off of Alembics, New Zealand. I will leave links down below for anyone that is interested. There are also places in America as well as Europe that you can buy these, and these are all handmade in Spain, I believe it is. They're one of the only places that actually make them. Now mine is only a 5-litre because that is the largest size we can actually have here in Australia without asking for special permissions to have anything bigger. So I'd love a bigger one, but the 5-litre will have to do for now. I went with a column, so the bottom of this is known as the alembic, and then we've got the column in the middle, and I went with the column still because it gave me so many different options. So basically with the column, I actually get to have it as an alembic or as a column still. When you have a column, it means that you can do either a hydro distillation or a steam distillation, and depending upon what you actually are distilling at the time will depend upon what sort of distillation process that you want. You tend to use your steam distillation to do your more delicate plants like lavender, and you will get more essential oil out of it, because you're not actually putting the plant through too much stress. And to do a steam distillation, you need a column, and what you do is you put all of your botanical in your column. There's holes in the bottom of here where steam rises up and follows through the whole sort of process, but that steam, as it passes through the flowers, will pick up all the botanicals, the essential oils and everything else that are in them. If, however, you're using something a little bit more robust, say you've got some rosemary or you've got some pine, you know, those real fibrous plants, that is when you would do a hydro distillation and just use it as an alembic still, and you put all of your botanical in the bottom here along with the water, and as it boils up it extracts the nutrients. But depending upon, again, what sort of plant that you're using is going to depend upon what sort of distillation process you're going to use. That's why I decided to go with a column, so I had that ability to change between my botanicals. Now today we're going to be doing lavender, so we're going to do a steam distillation. Now I'm not going to get a lot of essential oil off this, because at the end of the day lavender doesn't give that much essential oil anyway, and I also don't have a lot of plant here. I am still going to go for that steam distillation and get a bit of essential oil off, leave it in my Hydrosol so it's actually in my end product. So to do this, what we're going to do is grab my little column. I'm going to go and pop this on the scale and weigh it, and then we'll start filling it with the lavender, and I do that so I know how much lavender I've got in my column. Alright, so I've tared that out on my scale so I know how much my top weighs. It's time to get our lavender heads in here. Now I could just shovel those into the pot, but it's going to become quite compacted, and the steam may not be able to pass through it very well. So what I'm going to do, because the stems actually have none of the nutrients in, I'm going to go through and just cut off all of my flower heads to go in here. Now I could just go around on my bush and cut the flower heads off, but the reason I don't do that is because if you just left that bit on the plant, nothing comes out the top, and it kind of prevents the growth of all the buds. So I like to do it this way to make sure that the plant recovers quickly, and I can get as many of these flowers as possible into my pot here. So I'm going to get all of these prepared, and then we'll move on to the next step.
Okay, so we've finished going through all the lavender heads. We've got them in our pot here. I took out the dead looking flowers because they've got absolutely no nutrients or essential oils in them. I've given it a little bit of a push down just to compact it a little bit. You don't want it so compact that the steam can't pass through it, but you don't want it so loose that the steam just goes through it and doesn't pick up any of the essential oils and nutrients that are in this plant. I've weighed it. We've got about 150 grams. What we need to do next is pop our water into our base here. When you do steam distillation, you need at least double the amount of water to botanicals in the base. Now, I think 300 is going to be a little, isn't really going to cover much in here, and I could end up with this boiling dry. So I'm actually going to pour in probably between 500 and 750 grams of water, just so I don't run that risk of boiling this one dry. It doesn't matter so much with steam distillation if you put more water in than you actually need, because your botanicals aren't sitting in it, it's not going to damage it. So let me go and get some water into my pot, and then we'll go and pop it onto the heat. Okay, so we've got the water in there, our lavender in there, it's all ready to put onto the heat. But before we do that, we need to seal up some of these gaps where the joins are. Because they are handmade, there might be little hammer marks where steam can escape through it. Now, traditionally what you would use is some rye flour. You'd make a paste using some rye flour and then build it up around the gaps there. Because I've only got a small still, I'm actually going to be using some electrical tape instead. It's just a little bit more cost effective, and because it is a small still, the electrical tape will do just as good a job as what a rye flour one would do. But if you do have those bigger stills, it's recommended to use that rye flour paste because you can make a much bigger seal. So let's get that on there. Need a pair of scissors. Sealed up, it's time to get it all assembled onto the heat and get it going. So I have got my little burner here. We're going to pop that one on there. Even though this process would be really good to see out in the shop, I always do it in this back room because it is a little bit warmer, so we're not fighting that cold air, but I also need the water here to circulate through the condenser. Now, some people will just fill their condenser up and keep topping it up with ice. The idea is you have to keep the water in this condenser cool, so as the steam travels down through it, it turns it back into water. If you don't, that steam will keep traveling down that coil and it will be heating that water up, and it will get to a point where it will be too warm to actually condense that steam back down to water, and steam will come out the bottom rather than water. So we need to keep this nice and cool, and the best way to do that is with a circulating pump sort of system. So what we'll do is I'll turn the power on. My pump's a little bit broken, but it still works. So you can see it is starting to pipe that water. We've got my tube a little bit too high, the whole gravity thing. So it's going to slowly start pumping that water up into our condenser, and we're going to wait until it completely fills up. And then on this bit here I have a little flow control, and we want it so that it flows through this pipe quick enough as it flows back out of the pipe. So we'll wait until that fills up a bit more. Okay, so now that we are full on here, what I've done is I've just turned down my little flow tap here. So I've actually know where my flow tap needs to go these days. What's happening is we are still pumping water in through this bottom tube, and it's pumping it in so it keeps rising. It gets to this tube here and it is going to flow out, down, and dribble out the bottom here, and it just constantly turns that water around in here, keeping it cool. The top may feel warm because this is where a majority of the steam is, but as long as the bottom of the tank is still cold, you know that it is doing its magic. So we're going to leave this sit here. I am waiting for my little temperature gauge up here to get to almost 100, and then if you were here in the shop, you would get this sudden burst of lavender aroma, and that is when I know we'll start producing hydrosol, and I'll come back and I'll show you that. So it's at this point that I really do wish we had smell-o-vision. I've had customers in the shop saying how wonderful it smells in here, and it's because I knew that this had started producing its hydrosol, and this is the first chance I've had to come into it. So you can see on our temperature gauge we have got up to 100 degrees Celsius, which means that that water in the bottom is boiling and producing its steam, and it's all traveling along through its little network of pipes, and then it is coming out down this end. It does come, there it goes, and it just constantly spits out little bits of that hydrosol water. If you have a look, you can see there's like little oily shiny bits in that water, and that is the essential oil. It will work its way through that filter and down into the bottom of our jar here, and it just smells absolutely amazing. So relaxing and calming to do a lavender hydrosol. So I'm going to leave this sit here for probably about an hour to 2 hours and let it do its thing. When you are making hydrosol, it is all about smell, and you don't know it until you start making it to actually completely understand it. So what I can smell in here is real fresh lavender plant going through the room. When this gets to the end of the process where it's taken almost all of the nutrients out of those plants, that smell changes just slightly, and that's when you know that it's finished its distillation. And I think we'll probably get around, maybe if I'm lucky, 150 to 200 ml of water out of this. So we'll leave it going and we'll check on it very soon. Okay, so the smell has really kind of dissipated in here. It's got a little bit more of a greener note rather than a lavender note. And what I've just done is tried that hydrosol. You don't want to be drinking hydrosol, but you can use hydrosol to flavour waters and things, so it doesn't do you any harm. I've just tried that. It's got a slight bit of tang to it, so that means it's pretty much finished its whole sort of process. So what I'm going to do is turn my pot off. It will come down in temperature quite quickly now that I've taken it off the boil, and then I'll be able to pack all this up, and then I'll show you the water that we've got at the end. Alright, so it took about 10 minutes for the steam to stop producing and going through the still, and it's stopped dripping out the bottom now, and here is our hydrosol, and it is looking absolutely beautiful. There's a little bit of essential oil in there, not much. If I really wanted to, I could actually collect my water in a proper little pear-shaped device thing that separates the oil and water, and you can get it out. Or the other thing you can do, if you put it in a really skinny pot, you can freeze it and the water freezes and the oil doesn't, and then you can siphon it off. But because I actually want that essential oil in my next product, I'm just going to leave it all in here. I'm really impressed. I actually managed to get 300 ml hydrosol out of this. I put 750 ml of water into my pot there, or 750 grams. Managed to get 300 out, which is a really good collection for this size distillation, and that took me about 2 hours to get that out. So really impressed. I'm going to get all of this lot all tidied up. I've turned the pump off, so the water is now draining out of my condensation tank, and we'll get all this put away. Alright, so now that I've cleaned up, what I'm going to do is take my hydrosol and I'm going to pour it into this bottle. Alright, let's pop our top on it, and then I've just got a very roughly written note, just popping that on the front so I know what's in here, and then it's time to put it into the fridge. So that was the first harvest of my lavender for this season, put through the still. When I was cutting it this morning, I could see lots of new growth on the plant, lots of new buds forming. When you do cut those spikes of your lavender, you tend to find you'll get at least 2 more spikes come up off the side of it, and the more you keep cutting those spikes, the more you get off each of those heads. And I have had up to 4 flower spikes out of one little head of the plant, so it does it a lot of good to constantly be trimming it and harvesting those flowers. So I reckon in about 2 to 3 weeks time I will have another lot of lavender that I can put through the still, and then by the end of the season I should have at least 1.5 to 2 litres worth of Hydrosol. And when I put it into my outdoor body spray, I do dilute it down a little bit with some distilled water, just so it's not as strong. It's not harmful or anything, I just like to have it that little bit diluted so it's not too overpowering. So that will keep me going all throughout the summer month. I hope you've enjoyed coming along with me as I distilled my first harvest of lavender for this year. If you did, why not leave me a thumbs up, any comments down below, and until the next video comes out, I hope you have a great one. I'll see you then. Bye.